We got high drama in the courtroom in Kenosha. Man, have you had a chance to watch any of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and the fact that the defendant, he's on the witness stand today, Matt?
Yeah, I did. I watched a lot of the cross-examination by the prosecutor. I thought he did a good job. You know, the decision to put Rittenhouse on the stand is a very tough decision. I mean, most criminal defense lawyers don't wait till the very day of almost. This guy was well prepared. There's a lot of danger to doing it. There's a little upside. In this particular case, I do wonder if it was the smart thing to do.
Matt, in your own practice of law, were you ever a criminal defense attorney?
I was. My practice was largely civil. And when I did criminal law, it was largely white collar crime, business crimes. But I have defended, I did it as a court appointed lawyer, and I have defended I've taken cases to trial and gotten a verdict, gotten an acquittal. And so it was not the principal part of my practice, but I did do some of it.
Matt, have you ever had anything resembling the notoriety going on in this courthouse in Kenosha? I mean, the world is watching what is going on today. If not the earlier parts of the trial, I think lots of people are tuning in. Anything resembling that in your own personal experience, Matt?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. And no, I never did a homicide, you know, and that's really serious stuff. And that's for people who concentrate on that. But I thought this prosecutor did a good job. I think the defense attorney did. There are a couple of things I'm going to point out quick. One is when Rittenhouse started to cry on the stand, that to me looked contrived. There are many lawyers, when they want to get some mercy out of a jury, will tell them to do that. If you analyze that tape and take a look at it, take a look at his lawyer's face while he's doing it. And I've been up against lawyers in civil cases who, especially with female plaintiffs, have advised them to cry at a certain point. And that's a tough one because juries can fall for it. In this particular case, I think it was contrived, but we'll see, we'll see what it did. But there are a lot of other interesting things about that cross-examination also.
Man, I want to play the sound of Rittenhouse when he sort of lost his control, or at least you think he feigned it, but I want the audience to know what this sounded like. I believe it's cut number 15. I'm going to need your help here. We've got some of the sound, this testimony still going on, cross-examination still going on as we take the airwaves today. But here it is, cut number 15. Now, this is Rittenhouse, and then eventually he'll be interrupted by the judge, Bruce Schrader. Kind of lets him off the hook. Cut number 15, please.
That's what I... That's what I run. Time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir.
So the judge, as the defendant on the witness stand, breaks down sobbing, and you think it was some sort of kabuki theater, but the judge, is it appropriate at that point for the judge to take a break in the trial?
Sure, that's very, very common, especially if it lingers like that. I think what the judge was simply saying is, we'll take 10 minutes, compose yourself, but the jury's going to make up their own minds when they looked at him. And I looked at him, and I looked at his eyes, and I looked at the way he testified otherwise from that. And I looked at his lawyer's eyes while his client was crying. And there is very little doubt in my mind, quite frankly, that was rehearsed several times.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. That's Matt Flynn. He is an attorney by trade, twice elected Democratic Party of Wisconsin chair. He ran for governor, and he's the host of Matt Flynn Direct. And most importantly, he's a friend of mine. He answered the call today. Matt, appreciate you doing so. So when I called you this morning, I told you my first impression of Rittenhouse, and this was still during the defense's sort of leading him through his testimony. I thought he came off as a fairly credible witness. I thought that he was respectful, that he was clear. You know, he didn't do the ums and stuff. This kid, 18 years old, I thought he did well under the circumstance. You know, you talk about should they put the defendant on the stand? Well, this guy didn't look like he was fainting away from the spotlight, man.
No, a couple of things though. I think that they probably went over his testimony many, many times. And remember something, they put on his TikTok page where his signature line is 4 doors more whores. It has a logo that says, I want to be famous. And then when they asked him if he plays violent video games, he at first said, not really. And then, well, maybe a little bit. And then they asked, you know, and the guy, he's a wannabe, you know, he's a wannabe. So he goes there and they asked him, why did you get an AR-15? Well, they were out of shotguns, you know, and could you have had a pistol? No. And
Well,
why did you want an AR-15? You see what I mean? I mean, look, I don't know that I would have put him on the stand because there's so much video that shows him maybe being attacked. They just say, there's a 17-year-old kid. He didn't know what to do, you know, but people dissect everything I just said. And you had your impression, I had my impression, and there are going to be 20 impressions in that panel.
Okay, let's talk about the video game, the first person shooter games.
Right.
And the prosecutor sounded a little like Tipper Gore. You know, it's the video game's fault. And this Rittenhouse kid, he did make a fair assessment of the game Call of Duty in this regard, man. The guy was so quick to try and put him in the game with an AR-15 when you can go with any sort of militarized weapon in that video game. And Rittenhouse, you know, very, very clearly said back to him, well, you know, it's a video game. Matt, my impression is the prosecutor perhaps lingered a little too long on that point.
Yeah, he may have. Look, the prosecution wasn't perfect on cross-examination. No one is. But remember, when he talked about the video game, he initially tried to deny he played video games. The first thing out of his mouth was, well, not really. And yeah, maybe a little bit. And then the prosecutor goes, well, you used to play him with this certain guy. Yeah, we played him. And he made him look like a wannabe that wanted to emulate the video game. Now, if Rittenhouse had said, look, I play video games, I'm a kid, sure, but that's it. You know, I don't do that in real life. But the problem is that jury says, other than killing 2 guys and wounding somebody here, he looks like a wannabe that roamed around the street and wanted to be famous.
Well, I was unclear. I certainly agree with your assessment, wannabe. At one point, the prosecution challenged him. He asked him, you know, were you a member of the Antioch, this Rittenhouse from Antioch, Illinois, you know, got driven up here to participate at 17. But he said effectively, he was part of the fire department. And the guy said, well, you're not part of the fire department. He said, well, I'm a cadet member. You know, he very much seemingly to me, Matt, wanted to belong to the police, the fire department. He wanted this sort of role. And my impression, this sort of eagerness of the now defendant Rittenhouse, is he was this sort of, you know, want to be a cop kind of kid that the cops probably liked. I got to think he was very deferential and preferential to the cops he interacted with and the fire people and people of that nature. Matt, that's exactly the sort of job he wanted. And I did also take note, bro, just trying to be famous. Well, the prosecutor at one point did try to pin Rittenhouse down and say, you know, is this your effort to be famous? Is these 2 dead and 1 other maimed? Is this what you're trying to do? Man, wannabes. At 17 years old, kids are looking for an identity. This kid seemingly wanted to be a cop or something of the sort.
Yeah, he did. There's no question. And look, the kid, you know, I don't know what kind of an upbringing he had, you know, but on the other hand, he did kill 2 people and he walked through Kenosha with an AR-15 and, you know, he's there for the Black Lives Matter stuff. And the kid, a kid like that has no judgment. Now, I do not know every count that the judge is going to show to the jury. And a jury may not say first-degree intentional homicide because he didn't go there thinking he was going to kill this guy or that guy. But on the other hand, who the hell walks through a street with a lot of trouble with an AR-15, You know what I mean? Loaded. He had 30 rounds, 30 rounds. He had 30 rounds, and he shot 4 times one of them. 4 times he shot him. So this is a kid who's a bit of a wannabe, and he may regret it afterwards, but he killed 2 guys, and he blew the bicep off another guy.
Man, a few of the good points I thought the defense made. The car lot owners. Rittenhouse said he was there at the bequest of the car lot owners. The owners of the car lot gave testimony earlier in the trial and said, no, we didn't invite these people there. And then Rittenhouse gave very specific testimony. Not only did they invite them there, in the words of Rittenhouse, but additionally, they gave them keys to the store. They were operating out of the storefront, and the guy gave them a ride down the street to one of these other car lots.